chums. It is I, Jinder, general musical dog's body, song maker, upper man and gig doer. I'm here for another installation, I was going to say, of the Guitarchaeology stuff that I've been doing about the guitars I play and the role that they play in my life as a artist and touring person and all that kind of stuff. The response was great to the video I did earlier in I think last month, something like that, about the Martin D18 Golden Era. So I thought I'd do another one as requested by a few people on the guitar that most of you have seen me playing live, and has also appeared in various sort of promotional pictures and whatnot over the years. This is my Gibson SJ200. It's a standard model and it's from 2015, this particular one. Look at that. Couldn't you just take a dip in that? Looks like a swimming pool full of honey. Go and have a very sticky swim in that to cool off on a summer's morning. Yeah, I bought this guitar new. I'd never buy guitars new, but I bought this guitar new in it was late 2015, early 2016, something like that. It's 2015 model, but it was I got it as a ridiculous price, frankly, because halfway through 2015, this little truss rod cover here that says standard, although you're probably seeing it flipped in sort of mirror image because I'm using the front camera on my device, so it probably says Dinarden-esque or something like that. They changed the truss rod cover so that it said 2016 on it in large, horrible screen printed letters. So all of the guitars that didn't have that on instantly became old stock and nobody wanted them for some bizarre reason. I paid wholesale price for this guitar, believe it or not. To buy one of these new now would be about 4,000 quid, but I paid far less than that because the shop, which will remain nameless, that I bought it from, they had been sent 5 of them earlier in the year by Gibson with the old standard spec truss rod cover, and the new ones that they'd sent them all had 2016 on, so those were the ones that people wanted and nobody wanted the older ones, despite the fact that they were the same guitar. Anyway, I got it. It had a Fishman Aura Ellipse pickup in the sound hole, like a thing with loads of buttons and sliders and stuff, which was frankly useless because although it sounded great plugged in, the problem was that in the studio, all of the buttons and sliders and everything, you put a mic on the guitar and you could hear them all rattling about. So rather than sticking a load of gaffer tape in my guitar to stop the buttons rattling, I thought, no, I'll just take the pickup out. Put a Fishman Matrix Infinity pickup in it, undersaddle pickup initially, didn't really suit the guitar. And eventually, a few years ago, I went over to using these beautiful sound hole pickups that are made by a company called Sunrise, made by a guy called Jim Kaufman in California. Sunrise have only ever made one pickup. They make it with a short wire or a long wire. That's it. It's an S1 or an S2. The S2 has a little jack on the inside so you can connect it and disconnect it, and the S1 just has a wire. Or there's the S1LW as well, which has a long wire, and the S1 which just has a short wire. So basic technology. Jim Kaufman's been making these for about 40 years or so. They were sort of the original industry standard magnetic sound hole pickup, and they still sound great. I don't know how they work. They're a passive pickup. They don't have any batteries or preamps or anything on board, so you have to run them into a preamp outside the guitar. But the nice thing with that is it means there's no batteries inside your guitar, nothing to go flat, nothing you have to fiddle about with changing when the strings are off and all of that kind of stuff. It's just plug and play. Which I love. They sound great. That's my live sound Sunrise pickups. I use them in most of my guitars, but I do use a K&K in a couple of guitars, and I'm keen. I've just been actually talking to the distributor of the James May Ultratonic soundboard transducer pickup, and next year I'm going to switch one of my guitars over to those and see how I get on with that. I've heard great things and I'm looking forward to trying those out. But for now, over the last few years, Sunrise have been the sort of the bedrock of my live sound. So that's that. They're not a cheap pickup. You know, when I had the Fishman Matrix Infinity pickup in this guitar. It's about £120 pickup, but then if you've got a guitar that's kind of, I mean, ostensibly, as I said, if you buy one of these new now, it's 4,000 quid. If you buy a 4,000 quid professional level instrument, it seems, you know, counterintuitive to put a cheap pickup in it. So the Sunrise is a £300 pickup, and the James May pickups are a similar kind of price, maybe a little less, but the Sunrise is just a great pickup. Richard Thompson uses one, Lyle Lovett uses one, Emmylou Harris uses one, and has done for the last, you know, nearly 40 years in her SJ200, which is basically the same guitar as this. So, you know, you kind of think, why not? So sound-wise, the great thing with these guitars is they're very balanced, so they record very well. There's no sort of spiky mid-range. There's no kind of stuff that collides with vocal frequencies. They've got a kind of a scooped kind of thing, so you get this big bottom end and this lovely chimey top end. They're never a harsh guitar, or never boomy, but there's a real wide range, like a good PA speaker. There's a flat response and a full range of sound. So a great recording guitar. As a songwriting guitar, I've written hundreds and hundreds of songs with this guitar, because it's very good for providing like a wash, like a kind of chordal tonal bed. If you're just sitting around and you've got one instrument, something like this really kind of provides that great kind of warm, dynamic, but sort of unobtrusive tonal bed that you can throw vocal ideas over, and you can play around with melodies, and you're not sitting there listening to the guitar and going, oh, what can I hear there? What can I hear here? You know, it just fills the room with sound, and you can sing over it. And it's kind of, I was talking to my friend Simon Godfrey the other day, who said to me, how would you describe a Gibson SJ200? And I said, well, it's kind of like having a grand piano on your lap. You know, you've got this big dynamic sound which fills the room, and gives you a very dynamic kind of bed to sing over if you're playing around with ideas. And with my old SJ200, my 2003, which was a Sunburst one, all of my parts that I contributed to the album I made with my old band, the Mercury Men, most of those ideas came from playing around with that guitar. A lot of the songs I wrote with Simon and Gavin from the Mercury Men, with Steve Smith, who I co-wrote the song "Keep Me in Your Heart" with. That was all on that guitar, you know. And this guitar has given me the songs for the Silver Age, and a lot of the other songs I've written have been written with my friend Alvin Reed's guitar, which is a 1967 Gibson J45, which I will do an episode of this on in due course, because that's a fascinating guitar as well. But that's a kind of a smaller sound and a more particular sound for certain things, and that pulls different song ideas out of you as a writer, to a guitar like this, which is a bit more general purpose kind of thing. So they both occupy a distinct role as instruments that I write with. But this guitar is particularly great for that, and it also has like an attack, the attack transient with it, which for those of you who aren't familiar with like sonic terminology, the attack transient is when you hear a note. The attack transient is the front of it. It's like the B of the bang, as it were. And some guitars like my Martin are quite, the attack transient is soft and it's very lush and almost orchestral, and it sort of swells. There's a bloom to the note, but something like this is a very quick guitar. So so it's fast. The response is fast, and it doesn't have quite as much. It has a lot of sustain, but the sustain is more like a long tail thing, rather than like, you know, hit a note and it sort of sings at you like a you know, like Pavarotti for like 10 seconds. You know, it's quite sort of, you know, it kind of tails off, and it gets out of the way of other notes quite quickly. You can get it to sustain with a vibrato thing, but gets out of the way quickly, and without that response, I wouldn't have been able to write songs like English Electric Lightning, for example, with the that's palm muted. I'm muting the strings with the palm, like the heel of my hand here. But that palm muted kind of, that very kind of plinky kind of riff, that wouldn't have come from a guitar like a Martin or a Takamine or a Collings or a Loudon or something like that. So it's a very different response, and that attack transient is specific really to maple-bodied guitars, but also like a jumbo like this. You've got, with that riff, you've got the like that kind of pedaling bass line, which in this case is E flat. I string this guitar with 13 gauge strings and tune it down a semitone to E flat, and then it's just the riff is it's like a little kind of semitone thing on the G string, and then it switches from the E flat to the A flat bass, then back again. And that came from this guitar. The song was written with this guitar, and it specifically that riff came from me rehearsing my song Diving Board, which is from my previous record, The Silver Age, which starts with, as I was playing at the top of the video. That was also written with this guitar. But I went to play the intro to Diving Board and actually played it wrong, and played it in sort of double time, because I was sort of you know, just sort of having a bit of brain fog or whatever, and I thought, oh, that's quite a nice riff in its own right. So that's where that song came from. But again, without that quick, dry kind of response, and very sort of tight attack transient that this guitar gives, I wouldn't have written that song. This guitar's been on a lot of my records. It was on a lot of the album The Silver Age, and it was on a few bits on Almanac for the Failing Days as well. It was the soul guitar on Canada's Band. It was the acoustic on Wilder Winds, the opening track from The Silver Age, which has some, actually nicked the chord sequence from that, from a song by Cardiacs called Stone Age Dinosaurs, which is a great song. Theirs is a little bit more of a ornate way of playing through the chords and a bit more proggy, but I simplified it a bit and changed the key, but the progression is largely the same. But again, that, like a song like that, recording wise, a song like that needs a guitar that's got kind of like a balanced wash to it, and I like to record this guitar with a ribbon mic, usually putting the mic in the corner of a room, so it's sort of the sound is kind of funneled round, because with a ribbon mic it actually picks up from both sides of the mic, the front and the back, as opposed to the response of like a large diaphragm condenser, which I usually use for vocals, where it sort of picks up a sort of almost like a heart-shaped region in front of the mic. The ribbon mic, it actually picks up both sides. And if you listen to the recording of the guitar on the song Canada's Band from my record Almanac for the Failing Days, that's this guitar quite prominently featured in the mix, recorded with a ribbon mic in the corner of a room, and it's a lovely kind of three-dimensional guitar sound, very warm. And this guitar's great for that. If you want a guitar for recording, J200 gives you, or SJ200 to give it its proper name. They were known as a J200 for a while in the 60s and 70s, but they eventually went back to SJ, standing for Super Jumbo, as in like the 17-inch lower bout of the guitar. Something like a J185 or a J180. The Everly Brothers guitar is a 16-inch. and then smaller into like the CJ165, which is 15-inch and so on. But it's very different shape to a Dreadnought. It's kind of more curvy kind of thing. A Dreadnought is a more, I suppose, like a more rectangular guitar. I always think they have like a slightly more male shape, whereas these have a more female kind of shape to them, without wanting to be misogynistic about the shape of guitars. But yeah, so that's it really. I mean, it's structurally has a 25.5-inch scale, quite a long neck, Sitka spruce top. As you can see, it's got quite a lot of play wear from over the years. There's a little bit of lacquer damage from where there was for a little while a second pick guard scratch plate type thing up here, which I fitted and then decided I didn't like, so I removed. It sort of deadened the vibration of the sound a little bit. This guitar's been modified in a few different ways. You can see here when I fitted the Sunrise pickup, I actually had to cut a little section out of the scratch plate there. I'm not a total hack when it comes to working on guitars. I was a touring guitar tech for a few years and have done some lutherie work, so I don't just set about my guitars with like a nail gun and some crazy glue. So, but I've modified this guitar in a few ways. The scratch plate, the pick guard originally was what they call a flubber pick guard, which I actually, when I was working with Gibson in 2007 to 2009, when I was with Sony, it was an idea I actually suggested to them because the J200 scratch plate, often the designs wear off because they're like a pressed and hand painted pick guard. And I suggested to Gibson, I said, you know, why don't you cover it with a layer of protective plastic or lacquer or something like that. And I've been experimenting with lacquering some pick guards myself, but I found that the lacquer would shrink and cause the pick guard to curl up, which was unfortunate. But they came up with this idea of sealing it in with some of this like a thin rubber membrane, which is like the kind of rubber that has it doesn't have a memory, so or does have a memory, I'm not quite sure how it works, where it returns to its original shape every time. It does have a memory, yeah. So you can dig your pick into it and dig your nails into it and stuff, and it just springs back. But a lot of people didn't like that. I was quite pleased when they brought it out, because I was like, oh, my idea on a Gibson guitar, a little bit of rock and roll, a footnote in rock and roll history. But a lot of people didn't like it, including me. I didn't like my own idea. So with this scratch plate, what I did was, when I cut the little resection for the Sunrise pickup, I peeled off the flubber, the nasty sound deadening rubber, which on the prototypes when I was working with Gibson was incredibly thin and was very good, but when they went to production, it was a big thick thing that was about 3 or 4 millimeters thick, which was far too heavy and dull sounding. So actually I peeled it off to see what was underneath, and there's actually a super thin pick guard. I don't think you can quite see the thickness, but it's very, very thin with the design printed on it, and that was a few years ago now, and the only wear that's occurred is the little dot from the center of this cotton ball here has worn off, but other than that I have no complaints whatsoever. So yes, that's about it. The mustache bridge, which is always nice. It's like kind of having David Crosby sat in your lap. I'm not quite sure whether that would be an entirely pleasurable experience, but there you go. So yeah, that's the SJ200 and a little bit of my songwriting and recording history wrapped up in this guitar. So I'll play you out with a track or a snippet of my song Kamloops, which is another one that was written with this guitar. Thanks again, and see you soon.